In less than 2 weeks, Filipinos using cellular services will have to register their existing SIM cards. Let's find out more about the registration process in this report.
Over 150 million mobile subscribers will soon be mandated to register their SIM card with their respective telecom operators. The SIM Card Registration Act will take effect on December 27. New SIM cards bought after this date will be in the activated mode, and users can only have them activated once they register. Subscribers, both old and new, must register their SIM cards within 180 days from the law's effective date. But the DICT says they may extend the registration period for another 120 days. Failure to register during the period will result in the activation of their SIM cards. The registration shall be accomplished electronically through a platform or website that the public telecommunications entities will establish. Government agencies and PTEs will also put up registration facilities in remote areas with limited data or internet access. For their part, the DICT and telcos said they are in the final stage of preparations for the SIM card registration. Speaking on Radyo 5, DICT Assistant Secretary Ana Mayu Lamentillo said telcos are already developing platforms to be used for SIM registration.
We're still doing some revisions, pero rest assured, sir, na yung platform po ay ginagawa na before pa, and that we will be ready for the December 27 registration process.
The SIM Card Registration Act was signed by President Bongbong Marcos in a bid to combat fraud and cybercrimes. NCT consultant Edgardo Cabarios meanwhile said that telcos will be ready to handle lost or stolen SIM cards.
Pagka nawala po o ninakaw, immediate po ang reporting yan, no?
Yeah.
O huwag na kayo magdalawang isip, i-report po kaagad kasi delikado po yan, no? Kung mapunang iba at gamitin for illegal activities, kayo po ang number one suspect, kayo ang nasa registration,
Correct.
sa inyo nakapangalan.
The DICT added that the implementing rules and regulations will also provide proper penalties and fines for users of fake registration documents. The agency, as well as telco firms, are also preparing to use biometric and facial identification systems in registration and the possibility of using fingerprints as well. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Here to give us his insights on the SIM Card Registration Act, we have with us Infrawatch convenor Terry Ridon. Good evening. Welcome to the big story, Mr. Ridon.
Hi, Robbie, Gretchen. Good evening.
Okay, so, sir, do you think, are we ready? And once this rolls out, what are some things to look out for, both on the sides of government and on the sides of users?
Well, I think the most important concern of the public on the new SIM card registration law is the efficiency of registration. I think government and telco should be able to work together to make sure that the user experience in undertaking and providing all of these details, providing all of the information to the telcos will be essentially seamless, no? Ibig sabihin, dapat hindi talaga magsayang ng oras yung mga tao para lang magrehistro ng kanila pong SIM card. So I think that is the first, no?
Yes.
And secondly, I think it's very important for telcos and government to be able to really safeguard the confidentiality of information that is being required to be submitted by the public, no? So I think that those are the twin challenges which government and telcos ought to be facing in the next couple of months.
Okay, so Mr. Ridon, efficiency first, and then the second is security, privacy of our data. Just on the efficiency, gaya nga po nasabi nyo, yun ang tanong na maraming tao, if it were not that efficient and there are hiccups in transitioning to the fully registered population, what's the worst case scenario for our people? For people, who want to register, they'll go from anonymity to being registered to the system. What's the worst case scenario for them in case hindi ganun kaswabe ang registration?
Well, I think the worst case essentially is if government is going to be a bit obstinate on wanting to implement a hard deadline, mapuputulan ho sila talaga ng linya. And yung connection ho nila doon sa kanila pong SIM card. Pero I think government ought to clarify on whether or not the 6 months and 4 months extension that is in the IRR will actually be hard deadlines, or whether or not the DICT will siyempre look at it in the manner of implementation, on whether or not in the first few months nagkaroon ng problema, in the middle of implementation para medyo umayos na. Ibig sabihin, parang let's not do how we have been doing it before, na parang hindi, may deadline eh. Sundin natin deadline. Hindi ho ganun yung dapat. Kasi we are talking, I think, about millions upon millions of subscribers to various telcos, and this is something that we haven't seen before. So I think we have to cut the public some slack, we have to cut the telco some slack, but the clarity needs to come from government on how this will be implemented on a day-to-day, month-to-month, up until the end of implementation.
Hey, speaking of millions and millions of subscribers, the telco operators will be in charge of that database. Do you feel confident having that large of a data in their hands?
Well, I think during the deliberations on previous SIM card registration bills and up until today, that has always been the question on whether or not we are creating a new database that can in fact be breached, no? So yan ho yung lagi ho nating sinasabi, and well, unfortunately, the law is giving penalties, no? On firstly, yung they call it an intentional breach, or secondly, yung negligent breach, no? So talagang there is a great obligation on the shoulders of telcos to really make sure that there is no breach in confidentiality on the information of users.
Just one quick question, Mr. Ridon, on securing that database. Who's holding on to that, and who is ultimately accountable for the security of that database? Is it the telcos or is it government?
Well, it is the telcos. That is how the law has been phrased. It provides penalties to telcos for intentional breach and the negligent breach, no? So, and I think the question there is, ano naman yung gagawin natin sa gobyerno? Minsan kasi parang ang dami lang inuutos, pero yung telcos talaga yung magpapasan. In fact, even the public, pagka halimbawa, pinahiram nila sa ibang tao yung SIM card nila, may parusa eh. Hindi ba? Pero paano yung mga failure of obligations ng gobyerno in implementing, for example, yung SIM card registration law, wala ko masyadong binanggit yung IRR.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Infrawatch convenor Terry Ridon.